Well, hello guys. How you doing today? And we're gonna start, and we're gonna show you a little bit about Derek and what he's up to. But first, we're gonna start off with our beginning. Well, today we have Derek in the house. What's going on, man?
Well, I'm actually not in the house. I'm in the woods.
Well, sort of. Well, it just depends on where we are.
Yeah, no.
I know you're
Yeah.
out hunting too today.
Well, I'm not hunting today. So what it is down south is we have to prepare the land for the hunting season. So we've been doing that, getting it ready. So Southerners will understand.
Well, that's awesome, man. But you gotta have some chill time too, man. I haven't had enough chill time. I know that for sure.
That's what I've been doing the most is just trying to relax a little bit as much as I can. But um, I'd been writing on that book, and I finally got it finished, except for one little piece where I asked some military personnel, Lieutenant Colonel Bosey and Colonel Sellers, to to pitch in. So other than that, I'd been writing on that. So now I got a little downtime. I can kind of breathe a little. So hopefully.
Well, that's awesome. Well, our first question today comes in, and I'll kind of throw it up there. Could you explain the Doomsday planes continue flights? So you put it up there on your Telegram channel, and you like to throw it out there, but talk a little bit about the Doomsday plane continue flights.
Well, you can slice this a lot of different ways, but the first and foremost, the Doomsday aircraft is the most expensive aircraft we can operate in a different way. I mean, it's 159,525 per hour just to start it up, get it up in the sky. So I always start out with that. I got a buddy. He'll probably be watching this, but he lives in California, and he was defense contract, but on a contract with the E4. So it's really cool, when we talk about it. But so many people, because it's becoming so uh, routine to see it in the sky, so many people think that makes it routine. That does not make it routine,
No.
just because it's been flying a lot more. What I like to show people too is this also helps you piece together, if you're someone who's been following us a while now. It helps you see the optics of what they're doing, because if you go over to Google and you were to type in the Doomsday plane and you try to find mainstream articles or articles on the Doomsday, you'll see some articles on there that makes it look like, man, it's like seeing an alien shoot across the sky. How rare it is to see the Doomsday plane. And so, there were two in the sky yesterday at the same time. One had a call sign, the other one didn't. But they don't just put that plane up in the sky just to be training. Now, what they're showing you, the people who, well, what they're showing the people who aren't awake versus the ones who are awake, is a different story. There's been a lot of nuclear talk, nuclear this, nuclear that. President Trump says, oh, Joe Biden's going to start World War III with nuclear weapons, this, that, and other. And then, of course, he just truth, I think it was a couple of days ago, or maybe a week ago. I have to go back and look at the date of it. But he had truth where Joe had said we're getting rid of weapons of mass destruction and this, that, and the other. Well, but it didn't make the other countries do it. It's kind of what the truth said. So there's this narrative they're spinning out to the audience that are asleep, that don't have a clue what's going on via legislation. And that aircraft is the aircraft of which you could put the president in, get it in the sky, and it can stay in the sky. I think it's about 38 hours, somewhere in there, with refuelers. That's what they've tested it at. But this isn't what this wouldn't be the test you're watching. They've already tested this aircraft. That would have been when the aircraft was established, when it was built, all the technologies that were put on it. But this is the aircraft where the president can he could control from the sky communications, nuclear weapons and things of that nature, strikes, call-in strikes. It's basically a battle. It's a war room in the sky. It's basically
Right.
what it is. It has that kind of capability and that technology. And it's a big aircraft. It's not a small aircraft at all. So it's not just training, according to some people out there that would say that. But I don't know what they're doing. You know, that's the thing that's
But it also
what people.
it tells you that they're in the middle of a war. You don't spend
Right.
159,000 just for the heck of it, just because you want to train. You are saying we are
Mm-mm.
in the middle of a war.
Well, and the legislation shows we're in the middle of a war. When people say approve it, well, you got to know what that legislation looks like in order for us to prove it. You got to know that the War Powers Resolution Act is where the president and Congress declares war in the national tense. Now, what's funny is I was trying to go through last night. I went back through about 4 different chapters of 50 U.S. Code. 50 U.S. Code, ladies and gentlemen, is the war and national defense. If you go through the last 5 chapters, I mean, if you did a control F on every single chapter and just typed in Trump, do that, see how many pull up, and then type in Biden, see how many pull up. Biden is hardly anywhere in that. If you went to Google right now and you typed in Defense Production Act, it would say Biden. In Wikipedia, whoever that is, whoever put that page up, Wikipedia says Biden has invoked the Defense Production Act 8 times. If you go to the actual Defense Production Act, it has his name in there twice. The one thing is one of Donald Trump's acts that he signed and passed, and the other was the baby formula, which in the news told you the Secretary of Defense approved that mission. So in order to know these things, you got to know what the legislation looks like. And the Defense Production Act is a prime example of another example that has nothing to do. Well, it does, but it's a small sliver under the occupancy, under the continuity government, under the federalization of the troops. It's way down here. But when President Trump extended that to September the 30th, 2025, well, that means everything that was funded, those appropriations are funded already. So that would include even the National Defense Authorization Act, because those things are approved ahead of time. So there's a lot of things that can point at the point that Biden is not president and that this is a continuity of government. But the Doomsday Plan, what they're doing exactly, there's no way for me to know that. And if I were still in the military and I was at that level of rank of knowing what they were doing, I wouldn't be able to tell anybody, and nobody can on that
Right.
level, which is why Americans want solid proof. But I'm like, the only solid proof you would have anyway in any regular setting is that legislation anyways. You have solid proof. You
Right.
just got to know what that looks like.
I mean, the point that we actually I was interested when I was watching film Oppenheimer, and one of the coolest parts of that movie Oppenheimer is when they walked in and they said, you have received your Q clearance. And I was sitting there kind of like going, huh. And then they told him that he lost his Q clearance, or something to that effect, in that kind of way. And I was like, wow, we now have that understanding of that Q clearance. That's really a nuclear level clearance. And none of the media will ever understand that point. And it hit me when I was working on this Nasara timeline, the pre-Nasara timeline versus the post Nasara timeline, all the way through in my Nasara timeline kind of stuff, is that, if you're an actor, and that's why also the media doesn't get this. If you're an actor, you will never ever receive Q clearance, which means you're a complete moron. You don't have any ability to find out what's going on. So you're gonna blow it up by calling them QAnon, Q conspiracy theorist, or whatever else you're gonna say, because you don't have the ability to have the football.
Well, the coolest thing though about the media though is the fact that now there's some out there that are still clueless, depending on who they are. But the bigger ones, like the bigger networks, they're under a wartime code anyway. They would have had the same kind of effect as what Donald John Trump showed you with the Pope, where he's sitting there tickling his hand. That right there was saying, and I said it yesterday, and I didn't say the words, but I was on a show yesterday. And I said, let me tell you how military works. Let me tell you how military talks. When someone like Donald John Trump walks in with all the evidence, they had this evidence long before 2016. But when you walk in with that kind of evidence, it would have been a true walking tall scenario. It would have been a true Buford Puster. It would have been a true John Wayne. It would have been a true any kind of what people, some sensitive people, would call cocky. Well, too bad. I'm like Roosevelt now. You walk softly and carry a big stick. Well, that's kind of how it would have looked when Donald John walked in on all these tours he went on, and he said, "We got it all, and here's how it's going to happen." It wasn't going to be, "Hey, let's make some negotiations." No, he would have said, "This is how it's going to be, and this is what you can do to be a part of it. You can either join humanity, stand up for the cause, stand up for
Right.
what's going on with the rest of the world that's standing up, or we're going to expose you to the world slowly, and you'll do it yourself. It won't be us doing it to you. You're going to do it yourself." And so that's how you do that. And that's how you get tough again. And that's why Americans have got to get tough again, not here, but here, and also here, and be confident, because that's all that is saying, look, it don't matter what you look like, who you worship, how you worship, and all that. There is a way to get along on all those levels, but for the federal government's sake and our Constitution's sake and how we were supposed to look sake, ain't the way it's looked the last 150 years. That's how you'd have to do it, and that was what was done. Now I won't use the expletives probably that he probably had to use on some of these guys,
I'll bet.
but that's how generals do. And I'm gonna tell you, it don't matter how cool, calm, collected a general is now, and they may be all Rico Suave, but you watch Lieutenant Colonel Bosey every now and then. He'll go off every now and then, and that is what a general or a lieutenant colonel or a colonel looks like when they have to, when they need to, and they know that. It's kind of like a football coach. Not all speeches in the locker room are all we're going to go kick their butts. Sometimes they just walk in there and say, "Man, y'all playing like a bunch of little schoolgirls out there. You look whipped." Or sometimes they go in there and slinging and cussing and kicking, and you know it just depends on what's needed. But I
I
know
had a
I
friend
know
of
what
mine.
happened with Donald Trump, and then talking about that clearance though, really quick. That's the other thing, is that this is something you're supposed to cherish and value, that you've been
Sure.
chosen to be a part of this team, right? And that's what clearance is. Anybody can attain clearance if, depending on what your MOS is in the military, depending on what you're doing in the military, you can attain clearance, but it's what you do with it, and it's what you're doing. When no one's looking, as the saying is. I had a sergeant used to say all the time, integrity is not doing what's right when people are watching you. It's doing what's right when people aren't watching you.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh yeah.
I didn't mean to interrupt.
Nah, it's all right. So kind of to shift the gears with that is I know a couple of the back wall dates were hit, and I'm gonna throw them out at you, and I'm gonna throw a little bit about what I said, and then I'm gonna let you kind of shift in and jump into that kind of thing. BRICS met in late July 28th, 25th. I cannot remember off the top of my head. And they met, and I had personally said, and some people said, that Scott, you were like, complete moron for not being right on this one issue, that we were going to go gold backed, and some people were all upset that I was wrong on this one. I thought, that was a touchstone point on that when they met together, they were planning on going gold backed. And by the way, they did go gold backed. What you don't know is they absolutely went gold backed, and they were saying, well, and they were going to leave us, to push us away. They actually just left us behind in the dust. That they did exactly what they said they were going to do. And then you actually found that the secondary point, and I verified that one as well, that we had the 13848 that was found in January of 2018. I think that's right. Isn't that right?
Sorry, I was looking at a jet that coming by. I was going to see if you could see it, but
No, sometimes you
anyway,
can, sometimes you can't. But
it was really cool.
13848 was that 2018?
It's
Um,
it's September 12th, 2018.
oh, okay. So anyway, so in that time frame, specifically made for before the 2018 election, major election. So what that was done for is to deal with election integrity, and that its back wall point was supposed to be, and it was extended, and it was the last supposed extension was going to be for this September, and then in September 7th, real under the radar, moron Biden comes out with a little very coy message. And for those of you who did not read his little lunacy, he basically stated that we're very concerned with election integrity, and we re-signed 14848. And I'm going to let Derek open up the can of worms that he actually dealt with when he did this, because what he basically said is that we, and he did not talk about who wrote it. He just said we're very much into election integrity, and we extended this for another year, and we think it's very important. Now, and they did it on September 7th, but no one found out about it until about the 10th or something like that, or something to that effect. And then all of the patriots flamed much of the truther community, of the truthers like me and like you, that and like we were a bunch of liars, because and whatever, because we said that it was going to go away, and then everyone was deflated, and then we were and oh my God, we're going to die here, and this kind of thing. And my response was I annoyed? Yes. Did it mean that we are going to, go to hell in a handbasket? No. And then lastly, I'll say it this way, and then I'm going to let you jump all the way in. Is this thing isn't done, and it is never going to take another year. They just knew that it was going to take just a little bit more time frame to get this puppy done. And I would say this: if it's kind of, and this is the Scott statement, so don't, this is not Derek's statement, and I didn't clear this with Derek, so it's kind of like Derek wrote, let's just put it in another way. Let's say Derek wrote my death warrant. He wrote it 5 years ago. He wrote it with a 3-year termination period, because that's all he could do. But I took over 2 years ago, and but why would I, for any reason whatsoever, because this means crimes against humanity for election integrity, why would I, for any reason, extend the period of time under it? And that's exactly what I did. Extend the executive order for Derek's writings. That's what I did. If I and he did it on me. And that's how ridiculous that is. So I'm going to let you kind of, go off and say, if I'm loony on that viewpoint, or if you have a different way of looking at that too. So
Well, the thing is majority of these people still are not seeing the bigger picture, and until you see the bigger picture and then also understand the bigger picture, you and I can explain it to them all day long, but if they're not capable of digesting it, it's like people who read the Bible. People read the Bible. Reading the Bible don't help you. Digesting the Bible helps you. Understanding what it means helps you. So it's
touchdown.
like the old saying, knowledge is power. No, it's not. It's the application of knowledge that's power. It's not knowledge itself. You can read all you want, but they don't mean that you know what you're reading. So when you look at the bigger picture, an executive order is a sanction, or it's the executive power of the president going, okay, something over here didn't take place, so I'm going to write this executive order. It's going to be done, right? So President Trump signed 225 executive orders. I have to go back and look. So to put that in perspective, everybody say, "Oh, he was a dictator." Well, no, every other president in the last 20 years has signed more than him. So has nothing to do with that. It's like I tell people, put all this stuff aside. You got to know what legislation looks like before you can even enter the ring of conversation with us. You got to know what the language and terminology means before you can even comprehend what we're talking about. Doesn't mean we're smarter than you. It just means that you haven't been talking about this stuff. So you can't panic. You can't get mad. You can't get frustrated, angry, bitter, sad, moan, groan, gripe, complain, whatever it is. You can't do it. And there's no need to until you know the terminology around it. It'd be like fussing at a football game and you don't even know what a touchdown is. Your team might actually have done something, but if you don't know that what they did was actually good, then you might be that idiot up there going, "Why did they do that?" And you're wearing you got your Alabama gear on, and your buddy sitting next to you, bro. We just scored a touchdown. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
So
I had a
it's
lady.
things like
Let
that.
me break in here for a second. I was watching my favorite team, the Denver Broncos and Green Bay Packers, in the very first Super Bowl they won. And there was this woman who didn't know anything about football, and we were in Denver at that first Super Bowl. And this woman, and it was a tight game, and we were like, oh, just going through the motions, and she was like, yay, and I'm like, that was a holding penalty on us. And she kept just like celebrating every holding penalty on us. And I'm like, and I looked at her. I said, "Do you know anything about the game?" She goes, "No." And she finally just walked away and went in the kitchen because she just kept celebrating at the wrong time. So anyway, sorry.
Well, and that's it. Well, that's the exact thing. It's like until people know this terminology, well, this is where I hit people. It's not calling you dumb or ignorant or whatever, but when you act like it, it's like that old saying, it's better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to open one's mouth and remove all doubt. I mean,
Proverbs.
so it's like
Yep.
when you're doing that, yeah, when you're doing that, then I can call you dumb, crazy, like President Trump does all the time. That's dumb, that's stupid, that's moronic, and whatever. But for those who innocently want to know this, then you got to know the terminology first. You got to, even little things, law uses punctuation, commas in certain places, colons, semicolons, single quotations versus double quotations. You got to know all those little things first and how it was written, delegate, or directing. If I give you a direct order, that's not authorizing you. A direct order is a direct order. President Trump gave a direct order to the Secretary of Defense. He didn't authorize him. He gave him a direct order. That was a lot different when he federalized the troops. So there's so many things you got to know. But getting on the 13848, it's one for those who are awake but maybe got upset. No reason to be. It's one little executive order underneath the military occupancy, which is the law of war manual. That's the bigger picture here. That's the bigger manual. And then the federal continuity of government, which is the federal continuity directives. That's the manual for the federal side. This is the manual for the military side. Now, this shows all three branches of government are under a continuity government. Therefore, they have a presidential policy directive called PPD-40. That PPD-40 is what is showing all those three branches of government what their national essential functions are to be. For example, the National Defense Authorization Act. Just because Biden signs that in between this time period, for those who are awake, just because he signs that does not mean he supports the military. That is a national essential function of the United States of America. To maintain the government is to have the military. So that's a national essential function. That wasn't something Biden did. That was something that Congress gets together, gets the budget together, and the president would have to sign off on it no matter who the president was. That's the national essential function. So by the time you trickle your way all the way down, that Executive Order 13848 is just a little executive order. That order was put in place not for me and you in the long run. Theoretically for the people, but it was put into place for governors, attorney generals, secretary of states, and judges, and lawyers who do not apply and enforce the laws. Then we already have election laws. We already have election integrity on paper. So we already have that portion. This is to apply and enforce those. It's also why this got lost in the mix too, but it's also why Donald John Trump put a federal executive order in for the protection of judges, judicial system, and also for the protection of law enforcement. Two different orders. Why would he have to do that? Why would he need to say, here's an order that we're going to protect these people? Because there's going to be a lot of whistleblowers. There's going to be a lot of people behind the scenes saying they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're not. So there's going to be a lot of that. So with that executive order, by law, by definition, when they put in these national emergencies, a national emergency is not supposed to be extended no more than 2 years. That is in a 2-year clause in the codes. Now, when he extended that, every time you say anything with an executive order or national emergency, you always got to remember what that umbrella looks like. Military occupancy with a law of war manual, continuity government with the federal continuity directives. Those are always your preface. So having to extend it don't mean it's going to go for a full other year. We don't know that. I don't know that. Nobody knows that. But because this is bigger than 2020 election, it had nothing to do. Donald Trump didn't run because he wanted to put another notch on his resume and he wanted to be president, ladies and gentlemen. To be yelled at, shot at, his family as well, all the ridicule, the mockery that they're going through, this was for a bigger picture. It will be revealed. All this stuff's going to be revealed. They're revealing it every day, just like, well, I'm sure what we're going to talk about in a minute. I'm not going to skip ahead, but what happened yesterday with quantum, we'll give a little tidbit. But it's being revealed right in front of everybody that we're not conspiracy theorists after all. There's a difference. Conspiracy theory is, oh, do little green Martians fly around and land when we're all asleep or whatever. All right. If you want to believe that, I don't care. I don't think you're crazy. I just, whatever, you do your thing. But legislation is not conspiracy. All right. And the gold-backed digital currency is not conspiracy. That is legislation. There is proof of that in legislation. All right. So that executive order, just because they extended it, it ain't supposed to be. No, there's a 2-year clause on that. But it could also mean another thing. In the years past, there have been presidents who have drug out national emergencies for years. Why is it called a national emergency if they're going to drag it out for more than 2 years, what the 2-year clause says? It's not a national emergency. If that problem, it's a national hemorrhoid. It's a problem. All right. So it could be showing you something else. We don't know that yet. All we do is take legislation daily, but you can't get lost in one little executive order because President Trump had multiple executive orders, had 11 executive orders with national emergencies inside of them. And there's more to be due. So there may be one in October. I have to go back and look, but there's one November the 12th that has a 2-year clause on it. It's been extended twice. The one that you and I have gone over before, the Executive Order 13818, the human rights abuse and the fiat currency and all the combat against trafficking, that order has been extended twice. So its next date is December 22nd, 2023. So, for all we know, those could be extended again. If they extend those like this one, I actually said on live myself, I've said this, if the order is not terminated and there's a joint resolution, there has to be a joint resolution to terminate these, ladies and gentlemen, by Congress and the president. All right, the president who declared it. All right. Well, the president who declared it is not in office, according to some people. He is to me as a commander in chief legally, but he's not as a president. But I actually said live on all my feeds, hey, I will be more excited if it's extended and it's broken what the 2-year clause is. I'll be more excited if it's extended because it will show Joe Biden, once again, what people think of Joe Biden. They'll show him, one, breaking the law, which you're not supposed to extend past 2 years. So for the sleepy people out there, the normal people that have no clue what's going on legislation-wise, to me, for their sake, if I was sitting in their shoes, it would show that he is delaying the election integrity, and they're also breaking the election integrity, because election integrity, ladies and gentlemen, is not just a ballot box. It's not just me and you checking off who we're voting for. Election integrity is when you go after an opponent and you're trying to slander them, defame their character of stuff that you have no tangible evidence on. That is also election interference. So when President Trump says, I have 11 million pages with not a single typo, that typo means no punctuation problems, no grammar problems, no misspellings. How many of you people out there are going to go read 11 million pages? We can't even get you to read a page or two of what we put out. So how many people are going to read 11 million pages and go, holy crap, no tax evasion, no tax this. He didn't. I mean, he said it over and over. 11 million pages. Think how many attorneys that took to write that out, to type that out, right?
Because the
When you
point
think of that,
because the point is,
well, that
guys,
ties in.
the point is here is that what's happened here is what we're trying to show is that and it's because most people are not seeing this. Biden is over here with all the cabal evil. Trump is over here trying to show you. I mean, he's not trying to show you he's a saint, but he's trying to show you that he has to do everything perfectly to the law because he's always vilified. So he has to do this in this in perfection, and that's what Derek's trying to show. So, but back to this point here. So he's squarely inside. I mean, he's shoved over, extending this time frame. Doesn't this spin up the military to move their plan forward? Is that possible?
Well, the military had a plan put in place in the first place. The other thing is this: the military was never going to move in like people think they're going to move in, and I don't know who. And it was a collective group of people. In no way to just point your finger at one person who spun this around on the internet out there. This is people that have never been in the military that wouldn't know what that would look like. The military is not going to move in like a dictatorship. First off, this was not any kind of war that was going to require boots on the ground like that, except for the trafficking. But that's people that they traffic right in front of people. Like their trafficking is going on right in front of people and they would never know it. It's no different than moving drugs, smuggling drugs. You watch all those shows where these camera guys go hidden, and whether that's legal or not, whether they should be able to do that. But you can watch some of those documentaries that are on internet where they'll go and they sign that, hey, we won't report you, we won't turn you in. But I mean, whether that's real or not, I believe it is. But I mean, I know people who are border patrol. I know people who work in all these different things with drug smuggling, etc. I've seen pictures. I have actually seen pictures of children, and I don't even want to describe what I saw. It should turn your stomach in multiple ways, and you should get mad, bitter, angry. But when you think of the military, so many people think of combative. Well, the trafficking, that portion, when they went down in subterranean warfare where they would have gone into tunnels and they told you they were going to do so. This is posted. You can read it on Washington Post, military.com, all of them. 2018, the Army's spending $500 million training our soldiers because our next wars will be in mega cities, but not inside them, underneath them. They put this out for the public. 2019, DARPA requests immediate access for all universities across the land for their tunnel access for military. All right, they told everybody it was for training. Well, that was on purpose, right? That where you didn't panic with your kid at school or your grandchild at school, where you didn't panic. They did this on purpose, but they know what's going on and you don't. So it's kind of like I explained this really quick. I'm not a parent, but I have two great parents, and I had a good grandparents, great grandparents. I had a great grandparents and good parents that raised me. Well, most of you have children out there. All right. And most of you have every one of you have had this happen because this is just part of raising a child. You have a child that has a toy in its hand that may be too big for it. It could possibly hurt the child. So you take the toy away, and what's the child do? They throw a temper tantrum. They cry, they pout, they scream, they kick. But you know better. They don't. So when they get older, they will realize that. What's going on right now is exactly that. There's so many Americans. When 75% of America can't even name the three branches of government, I don't think you want to come at anybody who's a veteran who know what's going on and say, "Oh, this ain't." It most definitely is happening. You just don't know what you're even looking at because you don't know the terminology. You don't even know how that would operate on this level and things of that nature. And that's okay. You're not supposed to. But that's what these generals, men and women, have spent their whole lives in this. All right, when it was put on them in their heart, or if they were someone that a general had to go to and say, "Hey, here's what we're doing, and this is what we're going to do," and they got recruited that way in a good way of saying, "This, we're all on board. We got so and so and so and so, and this is what's going to happen." That right there was a controlled operation, so it's going to be controlled on purpose. So it's like I explained this last night to my dad and his wife. I said, for the people who are awake, is another way to look at this. You put Donald Trump in. We absolutely jammed the systems in 2016. We, the military, jammed the systems.
Right.
They didn't add votes to Trump.
They just
made
they
it
just
where
turned off
Hillary
the ability for
couldn't
the
add votes.
electronic systems to do anything.
That's correct. They went in there and made sure that Hillary and the Democratic Party didn't add the votes, which they've been doing for years. Not just for Democrats, they did it for Republicans too. They're all
Right.
Everybody's a part of this that are a part of the cabal. It's not just Democrat based, ladies and gentlemen. So they didn't add to Trump. His were true numbers, and so they started way back here. All right. But the military wasn't ever going to step in from the standpoint of, "Oh, we're going to rush in and take over." They've already taken over. They've showed you where they've taken over the voter precincts. They've said this out there. You just didn't know what you were listening to. But they also weren't going to tell you blatantly, like President Trump said on the campaign trail. He said, "Well, never again will we voice to the public what's going on with our military, because if you find out, guess who else finds out?" People are still people, ladies and gentlemen. So the military wasn't going to step in from that standpoint. Now, all of these little things are already a part of the bigger war plan. Everything that you see with indictments and all this stuff, that is all devolution. They created distraction here. That Executive Order 13848 was for all elections, but it also pairs inside of it with other acts. So when you go read the other acts in the first paragraph, those are the things that it pairs with. So, we've always had election laws. We've always, like we said a while ago, we've always had them, but that's the problem that people have, and that's where I feel for people. But I'm like, listen, I'm not trying to be the road dog here that knows everything. I don't know everything, but I do know legislation, and I know military, and I know military occupancy. Every law reads perfect on paper. And that's why even Democrats can get up there and they'll say, the Constitution says this, and James Madison said this, and blah, blah. But they know you people don't know what they said. They know you don't know the Constitution. They know you don't know legislation. So it's going to sound pretty to a lot of people, no matter what side of the aisle you're on. But if you know the Constitution, you know what the military does with the Constitution. The military was established to prevent wars, not start them. And it was also to support and protect the Constitution. Because when you get together on July the 4th, you're not popping good hard-earned money and watching your money blow in the sky for the Constitution. You're popping money and you're popping fireworks for the Declaration of Independence. And guess who established that? A military did first. That was long before the before the Articles of Confederation and long before the Constitution. So the military established that. So that's what people have to understand, is that the military came first in this nation. So this was never going to be, it was never going to be a standpoint of you know, your cousin who's a private first class at Fort Benning, Georgia, marching down the street. Now, what I think is going to happen is what President Trump has said. I tell people, quit forgetting the bigger picture. The bigger picture is God, the military, and Donald Trump. He's the face of this. What he says, what he gives you is what you take, because they're giving it to you. When he says that we're going to tear down bad and ugly buildings, we're going to decimate street crime by 75 and 85%,
Correct.
and then he said we're going to go in the streets and take the homeless off. I think that's where he invoked in every single code, every veteran who's listening, every single code that applies to a United States veteran, whether you have a reserve clause still on your contract that you signed or you're retired, every code has been invoked for us to come back. But it ain't gonna be no kicking in doors and being old Billy Bad Bones and stuff like that. There won't be that.
Right.
It will be, I think we're gonna be a part of the cleanup of the homeless and things of that nature, because when they call us back, if we get called back, which I believe we will, I believe,
So you
and I
believe,
know
wait,
this,
you believe that you might be called back into, some level of duty?
well, Q already said, "Are you ready to serve your country again?" And President Trump has told people to remember your oath in different occasions. He said it in subtle ways, but the thing is I'm going by what he says. In order to take the homeless off the streets of the United States of America, it's going to take a lot more than our active duty and our reserve components. It's going to take a lot of us veterans. And the other thing they've been showing people, if you've been paying attention, for the people who've been paying attention, they've been showing that the military is not making their numbers on recruits coming in
Right.
or trying to get more people in the military. I think they're doing that on purpose, though. That way it's a little bit more subtle. And then that way they also don't have these veterans against Trump who won't come back. We can't have that either. We have to have people who feel like they're coming back in for something else and then get them in there. And here's what they'll do. Well, one will fall back in the rank of which we were. All right, that will happen. We know how to take orders. We also know about briefings. And then you'd have a colonel, lieutenant colonel, command sergeant major, or sergeant
Right.
major, or general come in and brief you on here's what's going on. And you signed up, you gave an oath however long ago, and now you get to keep that oath.
And I think that would be wonderful because I've been hearing this a lot. One of the things I would love to see is, I'm not talking about someone who's necessarily in their 80s or something like that, but like, I'm making up a thing, someone like myself who's 57 years old, and let's just say me, but I'm not me, but I'm 57. I don't have, I have bad knees, but let's say I was a colonel. Okay, let's say I was a lieutenant colonel, and I could serve in some particular way, and I had that ability. Well, you wouldn't mind me in that particular role, in doing whatever that might be. But we have a lot of problems of just some really straightforward things, like, how about getting some, not only just the homeless, but we got other issues like, getting the illegals back in their own country. So, and I think
Sorry, it's
that's
raining here,
another
so I
issue.
had to get. It's raining here, so I had to get up under a pavilion.
Oh, okay, good.
Uh, but yeah, I mean, well, the other thing is, like, you know, most veterans have a good heart. First off, no matter what
Right,
they believe, we have a good heart. Because when you get in there, you either shape up or you ship out, as the saying is. So
right.
most veterans have a good heart. So when they're presented with evidence, first off, when they're told, "Hey, this is military law. You served under military laws, which are separate from civil. This is what you served under when you served, even if they didn't know it." When they're presented with the evidence of what's going on, what's been taking place, then most of those veterans are going to go, "I'm ready to roll." That
Right.
old saying, "I'm ready to roll."
Yep.
And so
Sign
that's
me up.
where I've been trying to, and that's what I've been trying to tell all veterans. Like, look, and I tell civilians, don't worry about how I talk to veterans, because this is how it works in the military. All right, in 5 minutes, you can take the biggest dog cussing of your life, and the next 5 minutes, you're hugging each other and you're all buddies again. That's just how the military works.
Right.
And and people say, well, I don't like that. Well, there's probably a reason why you weren't in it, and that's okay.
Exactly.
Find your capacity. But the thing is that, what's taking place is a war. It is absolutely declared in the War Powers Resolution Act, Section 1550. And in the executive documents below makes no financial sense whatsoever if you're an accountant or you know anything about business. The way these things are passed, even like the National Defense Authorization Act, the way they pass those is they get the funding first, they get what they need first, then they pass it, and it's for the next year. Well, if you read in the War Powers Resolution, if you go under Section 1550 and go in executive documents, listen to the executive branch, ladies and gentlemen, presidential, all right, executive document, there's a 2021 memorandum from quote unquote Joe Biden, July 19, 2021. In the fiscal year of 2020, that makes no sense whatsoever. All right, that shows you, all pun intended, a continuity of government right there, because it's a 2021 memorandum and midway through 2021, not closer to 2020 than 2022, but midway through to 2022. All right, so that document reads, and I've been doing this for a good reason. I'm changing the name, so I'll make myself Joe Biden. All right, and we'll make you the Secretary of Defense.
Right.
All right, and then we're going to leave the other one just for fun right now. So if you read that, in the bottom, it says, I hereby authorize the authority and functions vested in the President of Section 1550 to the Secretary of Defense. Well, you scroll up to 1550 and it's dated. It says 180 days after December the 20th, 2019. Who was the president in December the 20th, 2019? That would be Donald John Trump. So why would I, Joseph Robinette Biden Jr., let's just say let's just say his name was Derek Johnson for the sake of it, and I'm the president, Derek Johnson, who stole all the elections. All right, I'm Derek Johnson. I stole all the elections. I've extended all of Donald Trump's executive orders with national emergencies. I've done all these things. The Defense Production Act already shows I didn't invoke anything because they extended it in March 2020 all the way to 2025. But I'm giving Dr. Scott Young here, Secretary of Defense, the authority and functions vested in the president of Section 1550, which is Donald John Trump.
Right.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, guess who Dr. Scott Young is under as the Secretary of Defense? He's under the Commander-in-Chief, because that's a military name. That's not a government name. That's the Secretary of Defense. That's a military slot.
He just gave him the electric chair.
The Secretary of Defense reports to the Commander-in-Chief. So why would I, Derek Johnson, who stole all the elections and have extended all of Donald Trump's executive orders, why would I be delegating the authority? Hey, authority has an author. All right, the authority and functions. Functions means all the missions, all of the actions under that authority to Dr. Scott Young.
It makes no sense.
Who's to report to?
And I think those are the kinds of things that when we look at, they make no sense. And let's kind of throw it out in this other one. And you kind of made a comment, and I'm going to kind of throw out the information that you and I were texting back and forth. The QSI, which is the progenitor of the conversation of the QFS. So the QSI is the quantum system of the quantum financial system. Okay, they signed a 5-year overarching cooperative research agreement, and a House Financial Services, that's part of the systems, passed a bill. Now, I've never heard of a committee passing a bill. That tells you, wait a second, that's a little funky in how that works. But they had to have had the ability to do this, to ban the Federal Reserve from creating central bank digital currency. Okay, think about that for a second. You guys are sitting out there, Glenn Beck to economic ninja, guys are over there freaking out about CBDCs. And you guys are telling me, and you guys, I mean, like, I get 500 messages a week and getting going, oh my God, all these people are saying the Great Reset, and they don't know what they're saying, that, you know, but basically they're saying the Great Reset's coming and CBDCs are coming, because they hear every media source saying, what they're saying is that a digital currency is coming out and the Federal Reserve is going to be in charge of it. I'm going, no, it's not. And Derek gave me the evidence of that just the other day. So you want to talk a little bit about that you sent me?
Well, it was actually yesterday, which is cool. I mean, because I was, or it may have been the day before, but it seems like it was yesterday. But
it was 2 days ago.
I text everybody that I text everybody that I know, and I said, well, if there was another thing that my base that follows me, and I don't like calling it like that because it should be everybody. But if there's one thing that everybody should like really hop on and share and go, we better get our speeches, get all the naysayer speeches ready for the conspiracy theorists. They're right again, because you and I did this a long time ago. But I've been, before we met, I've been talking about quantum. Every now and then I talk about the quantum, the Executive Order 13885, and how there is a new, gold-backed digital currency coming, and that's not to be confused with the central bank digital currency. I've always said that, but I said there's a lot more people out there that are experts in this field than I am, because I don't study the in-depths of that, which is why it's cool to meet you, when I did, because it brings that element into it. But I'm the law and order and finding the laws and where they are and when they've been passed and what they were doing. And then it became an act. Then quantum.gov was launched September of 2021, I believe it was.
No, it was 2019, because it had to be before Trump had all of his issues in 2020. So
what I'm saying is they didn't launch the site, though, the actual
site. But they put here's the thing that you guys got to see is that 2019 they put the QSI together. 2020 they killed the Fed. So what you guys got to know is the Fed got subsumed or shoved underneath the Treasury. And as soon as, and that was in the CARES Act and the CARES 2 Act, the 1,200-page document that shoved the CARES Act, took the Fed and shoved them underneath the Treasury Department. Okay. Once that happened, from that point on, what you guys don't understand, and every time they pull money out of the Ukraine, what they're doing is trying to launder more money. And I know you guys sort of know that, but they're trying to launder more money because they've run out of money. Okay. See, in the past, they used to just run another bill out, and they'd call it like the Patriot Act, whatever they would call it. They make up some dumb idiot name, to come up with it. But now they just have to call it Ukraine. Ukraine needs more money. And so what they're trying to tell you, and now everyone's pushing back and going, wait a second, we got people coming to the border and we got this coming on, and I can't even pay my bills, and Ukraine needs more money, and it's trying to tell you, wait a second, I'm not giving Ukraine more money. But what now even the normies are going, I'm not giving Ukraine more money. But what that really is the cabal, a smaller and smaller and smaller group of people are saying, we need money. We want money because we're running out of cash every day. So guys, what they're telling you is the last tidbit of the CBDC people and the Fed now people and all of that are dead. Simple as that. You should be excited. So,
well, that's what I'm saying. Is like, that I was talking about the actual website, though. it didn't launch until later
Yeah.
because they're
Right.
doing this they're doing this on purpose though for the fact that, and that's what people have to understand. You got to be patient. You didn't know about this to begin with until we told you anyway. So that's what gets me is that most of the people chirping wouldn't have known about it anyway until we did tell about it. So that's the funniest thing is that a lot of the chirping is coming from, and I get it. You want a better life, you want a better system, you want to. Who doesn't? We do too. I mean, my goodness, that's why people ask me and you all the time. I know I get it. Well, how's this benefit you for getting on every day and you don't make any money, subscriptions and this, that, and other? And I'm like, well, when everybody gets what I call a pull their weight card and everybody starts pulling their weight, we wouldn't have it looking like this. We wouldn't all be having a tax for a tax for a tax. We wouldn't have known what they were creating that crap for in the first place. So
Yeah.
once you know that, people at the end of the day, it's not organizations, it's not corporations, it's not systems, it's not infrastructures, it's not structures, it's none of that. It's people who put this on people. That's all it is. It's like, and it's people who found a way because most Americans did what? They trusted too much of these people in the quote unquote career politicians, put too much trust and faith in there. Then you quit studying, and then the generations under that don't have a clue how legislation works. So how can you even raise your First Amendment voice and go in there and say anything to any of these people if you don't even know what's going on? You're going to look crazy, and they're going to make you look dumb and make you feel that
Right.
way as well. But when you
Right.
know what's going on, when you know how to combat them with their own language, that's why it was so funny when I first went viral. People were talking about, he's not a constitutional lawyer and he's not a general. Hey, you should want it to be that way. You should actually want more people who ain't a lawyer, who's not a congressman, who's not a politician to know this stuff. That's exactly what our founders were in the first place. They didn't want it to look like this. They wanted the
It's not
average everyday American to know something.
it's not supposed to be. And I just had a conversation with someone about the same kind of thing, and and he actually said we were talking about the debt forgiveness. Very, and he's never heard about Nasara. He's never heard about all this stuff. And he said, but I pay my bills. And he was kind of given this kind of point, but I pay my bills. And I said, I said, let me, and he's a musician. And I said, let me just say something. Let's just say you signed a contract for 5 hours to play a gig for 5 hours, $5,000, and you were, that's the deal. Okay. He goes, okay, but you showed up for 30 minutes and played, you only played 10 minutes, told 20 minutes of jokes, expect to get your $5,000. You signed a contract, I signed the contract, and you expected to do that. Now we go in front of a judge and I prove that you only did 10 minutes of songs. The judge is going to rule for me because you didn't fulfill the contract, correct? Yes. Okay. I said, and by the way, we were going to breakfast this morning. The title company that I bought this house that I'm in right now is out of business. Funniest thing in the world. And I said, every single title company in the world signs titles for banks. Banks never show up for any of the titles. Banks never sign for any of your titles. So the title company is authorized to sign it. That is an illegal procedure, 15-yard penalty kind of stuff. And this is the stuff that we don't even understand. We accept as just accept. And this is why we have to have people like Derek, and I'm not a lawyer, and I don't play one on TV, and I'm not the accountant or the financial planner. And so we have these financial people who disqualify me because I'm just some dumb doctor. And they go, well, why would I listen to you? And I'm going, here's the thing that I want you, as we kind of wrap it up here in a second. You got Derek and you got Scott, and you're going, these guys aren't like uniquely qualified to do this. But guess what? You got to understand, the military, this is a military and a financial thing. Both sides of these are sitting together at the table. They're fighting together to work together to create a new republic. And by the way, what you guys also don't know, that Oregon is about ready to come out with a new state. Do you know that Oregon is actually most of the territory of um, Eastern Oregon is about ready to secede its territory over to cede over to Iowa. Do you know that Eastern California and some of the mountainous areas of Eastern California is saying we don't agree with Western California. We just want to be our own state. I'm like, whoa. Do you know that Texas is saying the same kind of thing? We are going to have we're going to have new states. I'm telling you here right this minute, we are going to have completely new states in many ways because we're going to have some unique situations that are going to come out afterward, because we're going to have not just freedom points, we're going to have a constitutional republic that's going to change some of this kind of stuff too. So anyway, I'm getting off the topic there, but I do want to ask, because everyone keeps asking this question, and I know this kind of comes up, and I'm throwing this back at you. So I do want to ask the question: have you heard anything on this one as well?
No, I mean, and the thing is, there's two different ways I look at it. The guy is a Navy veteran in a civilian capacity. The one person who signs off on you going to GITMO. Now, he, in my opinion, he could have come to us and said, "I know way too much, and I can't send you down there because of that, and because of what I report to the people is not typically what New York Times and Washington Post and all them do." But what makes me think that he's not operating the way he's supposed to ethically um, is the fact that some random person from Telegram had a show, and they got a lot of the haters on there that try to steal all my stuff. Not steal information, but also steal my actual logos and
Right,
trademarks. So he randomly responds to this random person that he denied me to go. He's denied me multiple times. He didn't say that. He said that he denied me. He didn't tell, though, he's denied others multiple times as well. And this person takes it and says that I've been denied multiple times and I'm being investigated by the FBI for stolen valor and all kinds of stuff. And I'm like, that is the biggest crock. So he shouldn't have answered this random person.
right,
Him answering a random person shows me he has no professionalism at all. And then also that he's there's a lot of bad people still in the military. Now, it
right,
don't mean everybody, but just yesterday, the guy had only been on the job 2 or 3 months, a commander, an Air Force commander who was relieved of duty. I mean, we're now up to, I'd have to go back and look at the count, and maybe someone could go over my telegram, but there are about 140 commanders have been removed of duty since July 2017. That's a lot of commanders being relieved of duty. That is the chapter 18 of the Law War Manual. So I try to tell people that's another thing that I had a lot of people that jumped off of my page because when I broke it that I've been denied. Well, they take that as all the laws and orders don't mean anything. That's absolutely idiotic to do. It's the same thing as saying that the Executive Order 13848, because it was extended, that none of this matters. Has nothing to do with that, ladies and gentlemen. Me not going to Gitmo has nothing to do with laws and orders. They're still in place. They're still intact. And the military is still operating on those orders. I'm not the military. I'm not Donald John Trump. I'm one little person who served, who reads the laws and orders. But one opportunity also getting squandered by somebody playing politics does not mean my whole life is bad either. And so they're going to find that out rudely if it does go to a court of law, because I'll just produce my DD 214 and all the classified
absolutely,
documents I have. That's the thing that a lot of these people are, I've heard people the other day, my mom and I had this conversation, and my mother, being a mother, it's like she said, you can't stop me from being a mother. You're my baby and you're my only child. And I'm going to feel the way I feel, but to see people trash me about my personal life Well, one, you can't find my Billboard hits because Billboard don't work like that anyway. They only publish the top 20, and it's a system. Two, there's other things that have been spewed out there, but the reason why you can't find much about me is because it ain't about me. That's what I want people to get over and understand. There's a reason
Right.
why you can't find much about me. It's because it ain't about me. If it if I wanted this to be about my platform and me, myself, and I, then I would talk about myself a lot more. I'd tell you a lot. I'd show my PayPal and my Venmo and my Cash App, and and I don't even do any of that. So the Gitmo thing, I don't want it. I'm not saying I want it to squash in a bad way, but I'm just saying that I had done an interview just like this, me and you on a Zoom with the lieutenant commander who is under this guy. That guy, the lieutenant commander, loved me. He was like, man, we need someone like you who's an influencer with your kind of base to be able to show this. But anyway, the guy who's in charge, he denied me, called me a conspiracy theorist, and said that I inflame people's emotions. So that showed, I mean, his comments, that was his written comments, that I'm inflammatory and I'm a conspiracy theorist. So here's a Navy veteran who's in the last spot who decides everybody. Now,
Right.
like you, for example, you don't have to be New York Times or whatever to actually put in. Anybody out there could email. The guy's email is public information, and he could possibly send you. I don't know. I mean, you have to fill out your own thing, but that's the thing he's going to do. Is going to go, well, what's your experience in journalism? That's what they're going to do, and then you say, well, I have this podcast, this podcast, this podcast. He's going to go look at it. That's all he did was go look at my work, and he called me a
Yeah.
conspiracy theorist. So I sent him an email back, a long email, and I did it. I didn't ask him from the standpoint of, hey, Dr. Scott, what do you think about this? No, I said it like this. Okay, Dr. Scott Young, then if I'm a conspiracy theorist, how about you explain to me why Donald Trump's executive orders with national emergencies have been extended 2 years in a row by Joe Biden? Why would he extend these three especially? And I named the three that wouldn't make any sense. I did stuff like that. I did multiple questions for him to explain. And then he emailed back, well, I think we need to stay on the subject here. Those are all great questions, but we need to stay on the subject. Are you serious right now? So he showed more politics and a person who needs to be investigated himself. And I've given him a few, I've given him longer than what I probably should to post the email up. But, I am one of those people that, I gave him the benefit of the doubt at first that maybe he's having to play a role. But then again, I'm like, no, that's not the case.
I think a
So,
lot of people.
yeah,
I think we're struggling with is, and I know this is happening, and I'm going to speak this over you, and I'm going to speak this over you in the Lord. But I think there's I have been saying this, and I actually wrote this in my book, Revelations of the Red Pill. But right now we have people who are, the conspiracy theory conversation is such a powerful hold on people. It sits over here, and it makes people that the CIA and the FBI have made people think that if you believe in that stuff, it makes you feel stupid. And
right,
especially educated people don't want to feel stupid. So
right,
they're sitting over here on the pendulum. And so what happens as soon as it becomes the mainstream, as soon as the EBS brings them into the mainstream, here's what's going to happen, because the EBS is going to bring in the mainstream child trafficking, the election excuse me, the election fraud issues. It's going to bring in the issues of a lot of these areas. I mean, and then generally it's going to bring in, 9/11 will and Trump will bring in, the Nasara, the gold back currency issues. And I know there's some truthers that don't want to bring this out. I was talking to I'm trying to get Dr. Jan Halperin on Halper on my show, and she's she doesn't know anything about Nasara, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't care, but I love you as someone who understands the 1871, and she was talking all about the 1066 kind of conversations. Just gorgeous information, right? I don't care that you know anything about Nasara, but as people would start to understand some of these points out here, what will occur is those who like that military officer who looked at that, it will become part of the mainstream issue. And yet what we have to do, who have been already investigating it, is that we're going to be looking at them, and we're going to be so far down the stream. It's like we're on a rowboat, and we're so far down the stream, and they're going, hey, come back and talk to me. And I'm like, I'd have to wait, I'd have to wait probably 3 days to get back to you back in the stream. I'm not interested
Right.
in going back that far. If
Right.
you want to row really hard and catch up to me, fine, but I'm not going back that far. And because I get these people that call me up and go, what does Nasara mean? I'm like, go research it yourself if you want to go check it out. What does gold-backed currency mean? What does 13848 mean? Go research it. That you are a patriot. And that's what I want to leave you guys with. You are a patriot. Your job as a patriot is to research. Stop with this conversation of conspiracy theory, because that's exactly the opposite of what a patriot does. A patriot researches anything that she hears. As she hears it, she says, you know what? I don't know what I feel about that, so I'm going to research that by several different people. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, that's what I try to tell people, is that the word conspiracy theory is exactly what the enemy wants to hear from you. That's exactly what they want you to say, because that's part of their system. So
Right.
you're giving that to them every time. You're validating them every time you say that,
Right.
because legislation. I mean, everything I've shown, you can tangibly go click on a .gov or .mil site, unless I'm using a CNN or C-SPAN or something that correlates with it. But those are still mainstream. I don't use anything that's like crazy. I try not to, especially like there's one thing out there when President Trump was spending the 500 million on Guantanamo Bay. Well, there's only one article out there, and it's a construction type page. It's nothing I'd ever heard of, but there's only one place you can really find about it. But it's still there. I mean, and he says it in his speeches. So I mean, there's evidence also on Fox and all those mainstream where they had reporters down there. Well, I'm looking back, it's still operating. So, and it looks bigger. There's a lot more buildings, and so they validate it in other ways. But that's the biggest thing for people, is that our nation, the only reason you're here right now listening to us is what the founders put into place. And what the founders put into place is what I've been giving you, legislation. Now, I'm not a
Right.
law and order guy from the standpoint of, I'm not a law and order guy from the standpoint of every single law and order. I'm not. I have shown the laws and orders that support the Constitution that Donald John Trump and the military are using in a short little window. So that's the key with that. There's a lot of laws that need to be abolished. There's a lot of things, bills, acts, taxes, etc., that need to be abolished. So I'm not the law and order guy just because it's law and order. I'm the Marbury versus Madison. I'm James Madison going, any statute that looks like a law that doesn't support the Constitution, it's null and void.
Right.
So I'm that guy.
I'm just going to tell you guys, and I know that some of you feel really frustrated. The military is going to be working on the cabal for a long, long time. But by the way, this is coming to a close probably quicker than you think it is. But the military is going to be going after these guys for a very long time, even after we come to the close of this Nasara piece. they're going to be fighting them. Because, by the way, this iteration of it has probably been going on for the last 130 years or so, whatever you might want to call it. You don't dig them out in 8 years. It will take a long time to dig them out all the way through and through. So, and we won't be able to go on for 15 or 20 years to dig them out, because it will take us a long time to dig this out. We will have to come to a termination of this very soon, in a very short time frame, and we will still be digging them out for a long time down the roads with that. But so I know it's coming to an end, but it doesn't mean the military operation won't be happening after that point in time. So,
Well,
do you have any final
coolest
thoughts?
part to validate, yeah, the coolest part to validate that is the federal continuity directives, law, legislation, bipartisan legislation. That's the other cool thing about this. It's all current and bipartisan. So the federal continuity directive, the last date of one of them was 2024. Then in that first 180-day clause of where I, Derek Johnson, delegated you, Secretary of Defense, the authority by Donald Trump, that scenario, which was Joe Biden given the authority and functions vested in the president of Section 1550, when you go read that clause, it says the first 180 days. Here's how you would read that, because it reads one big chunk, but it's the first 180 days. President will report to Congress the use of military force and support partner forces to the defense committees. All right, there's that. Then it says in every 180 days thereafter,
Right.
which means until terminated. Well, in that first 180 days that he's supposed to report the use of military force and support partner forces to the defense committees, in that first 180 days, March the 2nd, 2020, the Defense Production Act was amended and extended to September the 30th, 2025. All right, so that means everything in the defense production, excuse me, what I was saying earlier about the appropriations of what Joe Biden, it says Joe Biden, if you go to Google, it says Joe Biden's invoked it 8 times. You go to 50 U.S. Code, there's that War and National Defense chapter again, 50 U.S. Code chapter 55. There's only 2 names in there for Biden. That is the one act that Donald Trump signed. So it was already put into place, already done by Trump. And then the baby formula, which said in the mainstream news, it told you that the Secretary of Defense approved the mission. Why didn't the president approve the mission? If he's president, why didn't he approve it? I mean,
Right.
that's a national essential function. We're talking about children here, baby formula, children's lives at stake. Where was the president at? All right, said the Secretary of Defense approved the mission. That's only 2 entrances of Biden's name in the whole Defense Production Act itself. Not what Google says, not what Wikipedia says, the actual act itself. Well, that was extended. All those appropriations, March the 2nd, 2020, in that first 180 days. Then 25 days later, so a little over 3 weeks later, Donald John Trump gave a direct order when he federalized 1 million reserve components. So in that first 180-day clause, he did all those things. He federalized 1 million reserve components. The only person who can federalize an National Guard active duty in the reserves, president. That is 10 U.S. Code 12302, 12304, and 12406. The same Title 10 that I raised and every veteran raised their right hand under. So you can't have one without the other. You can't believe in the military oath and everybody who served and not read what the president did with his authority. When you go over to the 10 U.S. Code 12302, the last amended portion of it still says it. Executive Order 13912. Donald Trump gave a direct military order to the National Guard and the Reserve. That was direct. That was verbal. The Military Justice Act clarifies that. Commander-in-Chief is Commander-in-Chief of the military. He's the president of the people and the Constitution. He also put it in a federal order. So there's 2 orders. There's a military order and a federal. The Executive Order 13912. All that happened in that first 180 days. It has not been terminated. If it had been, it would already show that. It would show a joint clause, a joint resolution, and a termination. There would be a termination in there. All right, that hasn't happened. Then it said, and every 180 days thereafter. Well, that 10 U.S. Code 1302 proves it that it's still ongoing because it has not been terminated. So all that stuff right there proves what you were just saying a while ago in a different capacity. And then you can prove it any way you want to slice the pies,
Right.
like I show people. But you got to know where the president declares war. You got to know
Yep.
that. And then people will say, well, the Constitution says that only Congress can do so. No, the Constitution
No.
also says on down for the Bible cherry pickers that want to read one verse here, but they don't want to read everything around it. The Constitution says that it's Congress's job to regulate the regulations of the Army and the Navy. Well, guess what that means? They did that, and by doing that, they gave the president the authority as commander in chief to declare war as well with Congress, and that's the War Powers
Right.
Resolution Act. So you don't have to like it. That's what I tell people. You don't have to like that, but you might want to know that. That way, whatever side of the aisle you're on, when you know the legislation, you won't look like an idiot and you won't be spoken to as one, because that's what the politicians have been doing. It ain't me. It's the politicians who have treated everybody like they don't know anything. And because why? Because they don't. Because you
Right.
don't. And so when you know their language and you go, hey, you work for me. My taxpayer money is set aside for your salary. And you've taken your salary with your insider information and y'all gone and made millions off of it. So when people finally realize that it's our system that they abused and we run the system because we tell them what we want, once people realize that, then we're going to have the patriots all over the world, and we're going to have a beautiful economy. We're going to have a beautiful ran system. We're going to have accountability, responsibility, integrity, honesty, transparency, all those things again.
And
When people finally realize that, you got to know this stuff.
yeah, it's coming, by the way. So that's what's going to happen. Okay, guys. It's not going to be like the end of World War II where the fighting ends, or the ceasefire of World War I. What I believe is going to happen is we're going to have an end, but then we're going to have some skirmishes. But it's going to be, we're going to keep going after them. But we're all going to know about it. Okay, it's going to be more
I know
out
about
there,
the
a little
point
bit
out
more.
the point I was making. I went off the track a little bit. So what I was going to
Sure.
show is this for the people who are awake. For the people who are awake. But here's another way to look at it. And if you're just right in the middle, you're hanging on, you're trying to learn, you're right in the middle, is this. I know for a fact the military stepped in 2016. There's certain things that I've laid out that shows it from the military side. Absolutely. Donald Trump didn't cheat. They didn't rig his votes. They stopped Hillary and the Democrats on that side from adding to it. Those were true reflective numbers. All right. Once you realize all that, especially the people who are awake know this. Here's the thing though. You wouldn't have put Donald Trump in there 4 years and then immediately 4 years after. Here's the most beautiful thing is you should want it to be drug out for this reason. They got him in visually 4 years. They got all the legislation done that needed to be done. The Defense Production Act more than proves that Joe Biden hasn't done anything. There's a few things it does, but that one especially proves that he hasn't done anything. So what you do is you put Donald Trump in for 4 years visually. All right. You do all this legislation. Then the 4 years in the middle, all his legislation is still active and going, and the military is in control. So then when that 4 years is done, they cleaned out all this 4 years and people were distracted. The people that didn't need to know, they weren't going to know anyways, right? But the people like you who do know, who are awake, or you're right on the border and you're coming more and more awake, that middle 4 years was still Donald Trump's in a different way because the military is in control. Then you get another 4 years on the back. So you get 12 instead of 8. And so
Well,
you
and
get
I
12 to
think
get
it's not even
everything
going to be.
completely cleaned up.
It's not going to be 2024, guys. It's coming this year. Don't worry about it. It's coming this year. It's coming
Well,
now.
I don't mean that the operation is going to go out
Yeah.
that would be what, 2028.
Yeah.
I don't mean it that way. What I'm saying is this. You get all that time to clean everything and make sure these systems are well functioning, well oiled, as we call it.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
here's why. What did President Trump say? He said our 250th birthday is going to be an all year celebration every single day. He's
Right.
telling you what's coming. So in order for us to that's only right at 2 years away. By the end of this year, it'll be 2 years away. So when you think of that, in order for us to have an all year, every single day celebration that everybody's gonna be happy every single day, well, that tells you that we're already gonna be a revealed process. So that's only 2 years away. after this year, after December the 31st. So when you start January 1st, 2024, we're only 2 years away from our, our 250th birthday. So
Truth.
that tells you what's coming before then.
Right.
And name one spot, and we'll wait for you on the next. We'll wait for you on the next show. But you people out there, find one thing that Donald Trump has said that has not come true yet. Find a
Still
spot. You
hasn't.
ain't gonna find one.
That's exactly right. So,
So,
all right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here. So, guys, subscribe, like, go over and check out Rattle Trap 1776. All right. Thanks so much.